think it's almost time for us to start. Brianna can be with us for about 45 minutes today. So we want to make sure that we get started on time. I want to welcome everyone to our program today. It's the fourth in our series, like I said, of self-care presentations that we've been doing. All the webinars are recorded, and we are looking forward to our presentation today, really focusing more on diet, and we'll learn a little bit more from Brianna on what she's learning about in terms of improving our diet choices today. Our next presentation, our last presentation, will be next Tuesday, and that will be on sleep and how that impacts our brain and how our brain functions. So it's important to get sleep in our lives, right, and take care of ourselves. So we'll learn a little bit more about the research in that area next Tuesday. And we want to thank you again for joining us today and for the whole series and the number of people that have taken time out of their very, very busy schedules to be with us. Summertime is a little hectic, and so we know it's sometimes challenging to join for just even an hour during your day. But we have these sessions recorded, and we would like you to fill out the evaluation, get your certificates. And for those that are teachers, we have teacher credits available. So make sure you look in the chat. Karen's going to put the link to the evaluation in the chat. And we encourage you to fill that out at the end of the session today. Take some time to do that, and give us feedback on this series and how it's been useful and helpful to you. In fact, we could even use some quotes, because we're always interested in quotes, and those quotes we actually use in our reports. So we want to thank you for doing that. We also want to thank our sponsors of the program, certainly the Delaware County Rural Healthcare Alliance, which is a health network in our county, a rural health network, the ACEs Task Force, which has sponsored these programs, as well as Cornell Cooperative Extension of Delaware and Orange County. We're hoping next Tuesday we can share our upcoming plans for our programs in the fall. And you'll be excited to know that we're going to be planning some more virtual trainings, a conference in December to keep everybody engaged and working together. And so next week we'll share a little bit about what's going to happen in the fall and how you can join us for continuing education and support for your work that you're doing with families and communities that you serve. So I am going to now introduce our speaker. We're very excited to have Brianna with us today. She's a third-year PhD student at the University of Illinois, where she is studying nutritional biochemistry through the Division of Nutritional Sciences. She is also working towards getting her registered dietitian certification. So she's very busy. She is originally from Franklin, Massachusetts, and attended the University of Massachusetts in Boston for undergraduate degree in biochemistry. So today she'll be presenting some information and leading a discussion about antioxidants and breaking down the facts and fictions when it comes to their health benefits. So welcome, Brianna. We're going to turn everything over to you, and we'll be watching the chat. So if you have questions, put them in the chat. And if we have a few minutes at the very end of the presentation today, we'll try to engage Brianna in answering some of your questions. So Brianna, I think you're ready. You can also share any more information about what you're doing in Illinois, and we welcome you to our program today.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here. Thanks for the nice introduction. So I will talk about free radical fighting antioxidants today, and some more about my research as well. So just for today's agenda, just so we all have a good outline, we're going to talk about what are antioxidants and how do they work at a molecular level to accomplish the things that we know and love. What are the current health recommendations, if there are any, and what they are? what are some foods that you can incorporate that are high in antioxidants, and some that you might think are high, but we'll find out later they might not be. And also other ways to increase your consumption and easy ways to sneak them in every day. So this is what I look like. Meet Bree. Like Jan said, I'm a third-year PhD and registered dietitian student at the U of I. I'm in the Division of Nutrition Sciences, and I'm in Dr. Kelly Swanson's lab. We are in animal science, so his lab does a lot of research on cats and dog microbiome. I specifically do research on mice models. My most recent project was on the effects of kefir. So kefir is a fermented milk beverage. So we did a DNA sequence on commercial products to see if the bacterial content matched what the label said, and the bacterial amount matched what the label said. And then I also currently do some research on citrus flavonoids, which are compounds found in the lemon rind and the grapefruit rind and the orange rind. Those are really high potency antioxidants. So we're trying to discover or understand how they affect the microbiome in inflammation models. And as they said as well, I previously am from Boston, Massachusetts. That's where my family's from. I have lots of family in Ithaca, New York, actually, as well. All my family is in New York. So I'm really happy to be doing this today. All right, so first we're going to do some audience engagement. So what are some fruits and vegetables that you guys love to eat on the day-to-day? You can throw it in the chat. We'll see how everyone's feeling today, and what are some that you guys love to have on the daily basis. I love blueberries, strawberries, broccoli. Yes, for sure. Carrots, raspberries. Yeah, I have a soft spot for spinach. I love spinach. All right, so yeah, so we all have a lot of really nice colorful vegetables in our diet, which is awesome. Yeah, don't eat those together. Blueberries and broccoli, that'd be a weird combination. All right, so thank you for your answers. We're gonna go into a couple definitions just so that we're all on the same playing field. So to define it, an antioxidant is a substance or a compound that can prevent or slow damage to cells caused by free radicals. Free radicals are unstable molecules that our bodies will produce in a reaction to certain environmental stresses or other certain pressures on our life that will cause these compounds to become unstable. And then what happens when they're unstable is something called oxidative stress. So an oxidative stress can be described as a disturbance in the balance between the production of radical oxygen species and the antioxidant defenses. So we'll go into a lot more detail into how they're all related, but these are the definitions. Okay, so what are antioxidants? So they're compounds made in our body or obtained by dietary sources. So not only can we synthesize our own antioxidants, we can also get it from food and fruits and vegetables, like you guys just mentioned. The antioxidants are really important because they protect our cells from radical damage. So they're really our body's defense system to help clean up and kind of quench all of those reactive oxygen species. And some common ones that you guys are probably familiar with are vitamins A, C, and E. Those are all antioxidants. So you can get those from your body. Or you could also get them from dietary sources. And then many people are familiar, or hopefully you're familiar with the term phytochemicals, which is a non-nutritive substance that are in lots of fruits and vegetables. A common one that gives red wine, its red color, is resveratrol and several other antioxidants in wine. So those compounds are an example of phytochemicals. And one that you'll see a lot in vitamin E is carotenoids, or in carrots are carotenoids as well. And then flavonoids are another form of phytochemicals that, for example, are seen in wine or in citrus fruits, like what I do my research on. And antioxidants are stable enough that they can donate a hydrogen or an electron and still retain their structure and still retain their equal energy levels. So they're able to donate, but they're not going to become unstable after the donation. And that's why they're so important to us, because most compounds do not act that way. And because of that, then they can combat this oxidative stress and those free radicals. And I would like to say, if you guys have questions, feel free to let them in the chat. I will try to keep the chat to the side so I'll see, but Jan will also tell me if there's any questions. So this is another, just an image. So if we have an antioxidant, so we have the circle and then all those circles around it are just examples of hydrogens or electrons. And so what happens is when we have an unpaired electron or a free radical, that red one that's circled, that one can kind of interact with other compounds in the surroundings. So the antioxidant will donate its own hydrogen to that free radical to kind of get ahead of the damage and stop it before it can interact with other compounds. So the antioxidant can donate it, and then the free radical will have no further damage. It'll be quenched, is one way to say it. Like you're trying to quench your thirst, you're running a lot, you have that Gatorade and you're satisfied. It's the same thing. As soon as it donates that hydrogen or electron, it's satisfied and it won't cause any more damage. And like I said, the term we use is quench. So if you're quenching your thirst, or you're quenching the free radical, that's how we describe it. And so what are these free radicals that I keep talking about? So they're reactive compounds, and these reactive compounds can be generated from something like smoking tobacco, which has lots of carcinogens. So when those compounds are heated up, they are then the energy from the heat can cause them to be active. And then when you consume it and the carcinogens are in your body, they're actively creating oxidative stress. Inflammation is another place where you can generate reactive oxygen species. So that could be natural inflammation. It could also be inflammation from exercise or from illness. Any of those can cause reactive oxygen species. UV light is a very high energetic wavelength light. So when all that electric energy goes to, for example, a compound, or for example, you have wine out, like a red wine, over time, that UV light hitting the red wine is going to kind of quench all those antioxidants, but also generate reactive oxygen species. Ionization radiation can also cause reactive oxygen species. Air pollution has lots of carcinogens and other compounds in it that will generate this if consumed. And like I said as well, exercise is another way to generate them. So, okay, so yeah, electrons get excited, they leave the reactive oxygen species, and then they have like a loose end or a gap, which is when the antioxidant comes in and fills in with that hydrogen. And so this might seem confusing because the reactive oxygen species come from normal sources like exercise, but they also come from known carcinogens like smoking, tobacco, inflammation, UV light. So they're always going to be in our body. It's kind of a matter, it's just what it is, but it's the ratio of antioxidants to reactive oxygen species that we need to help maintain. And if it gets too many reactive oxygen species that the antioxidants can't protect us anymore, that's when the damage starts to have bigger impacts. So having antioxidants in your diet regularly can help mitigate any of those issues. And one other analogy I like to use is like a fraying rope. So as the two ends of the rope are pulling farther apart from each other, each little string breaks off. And that can be, you can think about that as the electrons. So as it's becoming weaker and weaker, the electrons are leaving. And that last string, once it breaks, that's that last reactive electron. So once the ropes are broken, they're both reactive and they can kind of react with other things. So it's a slow process, but it happens over time. And then they become more unstable. And so I have a picture on the top corner. You see like an oxidized apple. That is what a lot of people think about when they hear oxidative stress. And this is a different kind of oxidation reaction. It's similar, like we have a peroxidase, which is causing the apple to brown. So this is one example of oxidation, but the type of oxidation in our body is a little bit different than what we're familiar with. But you can think about this if this is easier for you to kind of equate the ideas. So yeah, so they cause oxidative stress, like I had mentioned. And then the natural antioxidants in our body will help fight it off. And the amount of, if there's too much reactive oxygen species, our body can't handle it, and then cellular damage will happen. And one thing they, like I said, damage to cells. One thing that reactive oxygen species will do is they'll methylate DNA. So they'll add a carbon to the DNA, which can add incorrect signals to the transcribers reading the DNA. So not only can it change, it can affect compounds, but it can also affect how genes are sequenced in your body as well. It will also cause inflammation. So when you have too much reactive oxygen species, your immune system will signal to the rest of your body, be like, hey, we have to protect things. So they're going to send out more inflammatory compounds to protect the body. But because of that, it could actually add more negative inflammation. So sometimes your body isn't sure what's best for you. And one common way that we see oxidative stress every day is through wrinkling skin and sagging and collagen breakdown. So collagen breakdown and wrinkled skin is an example of, the oxidative stress in our skin is starting to take over. In that area, we don't have as much antioxidants or immune response in those areas, which can cause the skin or the quality of the skin to age and oxidize. And then a really popular one that I'm sure everyone's heard about is carcinogenesis. So carcinogenesis is the creation of cancer-causing agents. So when you have too much reactive oxygen species, the possibility of those carcinogenic compounds will be higher. The possibility that they will be synthesized will increase because there's more reactive oxygen species. All right. And this is an analogy I like to use. If you guys have heard of the Goldilocks metaphor, Goldilocks is a little girl roaming through the woods, and she comes upon a cabin, and she tries out, there's 3 chairs, one's too big and one's too small, and then the one in the middle is just right. And then she goes on to try the different porridges. One of them is a little too hot, one's a little too cold, and then the one in the middle is just right. So this is how I like to describe the balance of reactive oxygen species and antioxidants in our body. We always want a little of reactive oxygen species because it's healthy. It's good to keep our body, recycling things and getting rid of old compounds, for example, through exercise. But we also want antioxidants in the body as well from dietary sources or also from our body to make, so that they can balance each other out. You want a good amount of reactive oxygen species and you want a good amount of antioxidants, but you don't want too much of either one. You want it just right. So I just want, maybe that's an easy way for you guys to think about it. It's nothing to be worried about. It's just something that exists in our body that we need to be aware of. And another way I like to describe it is a showdown in the cells. So if we have 2 guys, in a Western movie, we have one who's the reactive oxygen species and we have one who's the antioxidant. They're kind of head to head, toe to toe, kind of having to compete with each other. And so the more antioxidants you have from your diet, the better chances that they can deactivate the reactive oxygen species, preventing them from causing damage. So I hope you guys can understand with all these analogies how it works and why we need one and why we have both. All right, and so not all antioxidants are equal. They're all different complex molecular structures, and due to their different groups, they can interact more or less depending on what kind of structures they have. And because of those variations, we have to have different methods to characterize the antioxidant ability of each of these compounds. One way that we do it is called total antioxidant capacity, or TAC. So this is a pretty subjective measure that will let us know how these antioxidants compare to each other on the same scale. And yeah, so this is a way that we compare different antioxidants from different food sources, but there are many different chemical assays out there that test antioxidants. So it's good to be aware of the differences, but also the most commonly accepted tests as well. So for the TAC assays, so I'm about to show you guys some data that I did when I was an undergrad for biochemistry, and we did an assay where we measured the total antioxidant capacity of Merlot wine, Chardonnay wine, blueberry juice, green tea, and black tea. So these are all antioxidant containing beverages, but they have different amounts and different kinds of antioxidants. So what we did is we put them in an assay. So basically we put a small amount of each liquid into like a little plate, and then we added a reactive compound. So something that mimics a reactive oxygen species. So something with an unpaired electron that these antioxidants can donate to or not. So based on the donation between the wine and the reactive compound, for example, we can measure how much the color changes. And based on the color changing, we can see how efficient that antioxidant was compared to the other antioxidants. So here's the wine bottles. All right, so with this assay, so we have time, on the x-axis, we have time, so from 0 to about 10 minutes. And then we have the rate of absorbance on the y-axis. So that means how much is the color changing. So for the first one, we have white wine. So we have a pretty high absorbance, which means that there was not a lot of color change, which I know it's kind of hard to see or understand that from looking at this, but think about this graph as the opposite. So the higher the the higher the trend line is, the less the less it can be an antioxidant. Okay. So when we think of white wine doesn't have a lot of those dark red colors. So it's not going to have a lot of antioxidant ability. Versus if we have the red wine, let me see, I'm sorry, okay, so we have red wine. We can see it's a very very straight and very consistent color or lack of color change. So due to that lack of color change across that 10 minutes, it means that the red wine compounds quenched everybody right in the beginning. And then they kind of left it there the rest of the 10 minutes. So that's how you know that the red wine has a lot stronger antioxidants than the white. Let's go on to the next. Okay, so then we have black tea, which surprisingly reacts very similar to white wine. And then we have green tea, which is that darker gray. So a little bit in the between red wine and black tea. And then finally we have blueberry juice, which acts very similar to red wine, but it's still not quite as potent. So this is one example. I hope you guys can see what the differences are between these compounds. And this was with an NBT catalyst. So that NBT is the compound that we're using in this example that has the ability to be quenched or not. So I'm going to show you guys a couple other ones. And this is percent inhibition of NBT reduction. So this one's the opposite again. So the higher it goes on this graph, the better the antioxidant abilities are. So this is, for example, red wine, white wine, black tea, green tea, and blueberry juice. So in this test, we can see the results are very similar than the previous. The red wine did the best, then blueberry, and then green tea. So this is with the NBT. And then we have another test called DPPH, which is another compound that is reactive or can be quenched by antioxidants. So sometimes we use multiple different tests to kind of get an overall consensus or agreement, because these different tests can act differently depending on the antioxidant. So it's really important to do tests with multiple different compounds to get the overall antioxidant capabilities of the specific beverage or compound so that we can properly compare them. So in this, we have the NBT assay, and now we have the DPPH. So as you can see, we're going to have the white wine performing a little bit higher than the previous. Red wine also does okay. And then this one, we actually have we have the weird colors here. We have the black tea going pretty high. I'm sorry, the colors have changed per graph. And then we have, Zoom is all over the place for me. And then we have the black tea and the blueberry juice. So in the NBT, we can see that the red wine did the best in terms of antioxidant abilities, but in the other one, we can see that the black tea actually had the better, or sorry, not the black tea, I'm so sorry, the Zoom is like in the way for me. The green tea did better. I'm sure you guys saw that before I did. But this just explains why we need multiple different tests, because they don't always give us the same results. Okay. And so now we're going to talk about different health recommendations. So because, like I was saying, antioxidants are not all equal, the government cannot prescribe like one antioxidant or one capability of antioxidants when they all have different capabilities. So we cannot really interchange them. The best we can do is to give a vitamin recommendation for how much you should have every day. So, and you should always be going by supplementation by your doctor's recommendations. I am no means a doctor, so please don't take any of these recommendations from me. Listen to your doctor. But for example, for vitamin A, which is a potent antioxidant, men are supposed to have 900 micrograms a day, while women should have 700. For vitamin C, men should have 90 milligrams and women should have 75. And for vitamin E, both men and women could have around 15 milligrams per day. So these are just the recommendations so that you have fresh antioxidants in your body every day, and that you're having colorful vegetables and fruits to get these from. And sometimes when we cook food, it can either increase or decrease the antioxidant content. So for example, when we have something like a tomato or making tomato sauce, tomato has an antioxidant called lycopene. And when you cook lycopene and add heat, it becomes more bioavailable. Basically, this means that when the lycopene enters your body, it needs to be digested less before it can have that antioxidant effect where it's needed. So we want this, we want the compounds to be the most capable they can be. So sometimes cooking food can, create more antioxidant capability, but with other vegetables and fruits, like such as cauliflower, peas, zucchini, for example, they actually lose antioxidant capabilities when they're cooked. And I'm sure you guys have cooked broccoli before. And when you boil broccoli afterwards, the water is a little green. And that's because some of those antioxidants are being left over in the water, and you're actually losing that because they're water soluble. So they just happen to leave. So these are things to keep in mind. So maybe next time you should have some snap peas and not cook them, or maybe munch on some raw cauliflower. It's up to you. But every compound's different. And so this is just antioxidants in a clinical setting. Many pharmaceutical companies have capitalized on these abilities of antioxidants. So these are just a couple common medicines seen on the market to treat different diseases such as ischemic stroke, persistent venous ulcers, chronic venous insufficiency. I don't take any of these, but maybe they're familiar to you guys, hopefully. And then in the comments, do you guys know of any popular dietary patterns that happen to be high in antioxidants? There's a couple that I'm thinking of, but I want to know if maybe you guys are familiar with them. No one knows. Vegan. I mean, yeah, vegan could definitely incorporate some. Hopefully, I wonder if you guys have heard of the Mediterranean diet. That's one that's really high. Yeah, Karen got it. That one is really high in antioxidants. So that's partially about where it's from, the Mediterranean Ocean. But there's also a lot of food that in those diets that are really high. I think we went the wrong way. So I'm just setting the stage here. So one of the ways that antioxidants have been incorporated into the clinical setting is because of their really positive effects. Like I was saying, one of the signs of oxidative stress is like wrinkles, saggy skin. So by having antioxidants, or I'm sure you guys have heard of vitamin A retinol cream for your skin. That's because it has really strong antioxidant properties that can improve collagen, skin texture, prolong cell life, and reduce wrinkles. There's some anti-cancer properties to a lot of antioxidants, actually. Two examples are resveratrol, which is found in red wine and also blueberry juice, or curcumin, which is a spice. You can throw that in basically anything and you'll have some really great little nutrient boost for the day. And they've also been shown that these antioxidant compounds can encourage tumor suppression or discourage tumor growth. They can combat inflammation. So if you have a high inflammation state, having anti-inflammation or anti-inflammatory or antioxidant compounds can help spin that the other direction. Prostate cancer has been shown to be highly impactful by if you were to have a higher antioxidant diet versus not, to the state of that progression. Lots of antioxidant research is in drug discovery, which is what I'm kind of working on. Because of these natural antioxidants and their natural structures that occur in nature, pharmaceutical companies are trying to capitalize on that and design drugs that people can take so that they have these antioxidant effects, but in a more controlled manner. They can also work against cataracts developing in your eye. And a lot of Alzheimer's research focuses on antioxidants because small molecule antioxidants can cross the blood-brain barrier, which is where the diagnosis of Alzheimer's typically begins. So by designing antioxidant-based drugs that can cross that blood-brain barrier, we can help combat Alzheimer's or the etiology and the origins of Alzheimer's before it starts. So that's a really big area as well. And then there's a ton of research on anti-diabetic and increasing insulin sensitivity and also antimicrobial. So we have the gut microbiome, and I love and live by the gut microbiome, but sometimes you have H. pylori or other not as beneficial bacteria. So by having antioxidants, they can help have an antimicrobial effect sometimes. So do you guys know any beverages high in antioxidants or fruits, nuts, or spices that are like particularly high? Anything that comes to mind? I know I mentioned wine and blueberries, but can you guys think of any other ones? Cherries, yes. Turmeric for sure. All right, we'll keep going then. I'll talk about them all. So for beverages, this is the next three tables or slides are from a research paper done in 2010. And so what they did is they picked basically one of those antioxidant assessing assays. The one they did was like ORAC. And so basically it's similar, but just has a different molecular structure as that previous one. So when they did it, they tested over 100 beverages, over 100 spices, and over 100, I believe, fruits and vegetables for antioxidant quality or quantity. So they really had a full spectrum. And so all of these tables continue. If you guys are interested, you guys can click on the paper and look at the full tables, but I've got the highlights for you. So the espresso was shown to have the highest amount of antioxidant, which is pretty interesting. And then right below it was coffee. And I don't know if you guys have seen it, but a couple months ago, there's a paper that came out about like how drinking coffee can reduce prostate cancer and how drinking coffee can help improve your immune system. So reminds me of these tables. Perhaps the reason why is because they're so antioxidant. And then below coffee is red wine, pomegranate juice, green tea, grape juice, and then black tea. So I know you guys, we saw the other graphs previously that the black tea had better potency. In this particular assay as the opposite. So can't always take it for granted or take it on its word. And I'm a big coffee fan, so this was good news to me. And then for fruits, they tested a bunch of fruits. And so for some reason, dried apples had the highest antioxidant the most compounds. Then we had artichokes, dried plums, dried apricots, curly kale, chili, strawberries, pomegranate, mango, and oranges. And someone asked me last time I gave this presentation as to why the dried fruits had higher antioxidant compounds than the non-dried. And I'm not totally sure. I'm thinking part of it is due to the water content in the not dried version, kind of having interacting effect with the antioxidants versus the dried apple or the dried apricot has no water. So it's just the antioxidants interacting with the assay, but not sure about that. But I still think this is really interesting. And then, yeah, curly kale. I never thought that had a really high antioxidants, but it does. So those dark leafy greens, don't write them off yet. And then the last table from this paper is how oh, sorry, not the last one, but rating different nuts and legumes. So walnuts with the pellicle. The pellicle is like the outer shell, or not the outer shell, but like the flaky papery shell outside the nut itself. So they're just testing it with that. So walnuts, pecans, and then sunflower seeds have the highest antioxidant content. And then beans, which I was very surprised, have less antioxidants than whole wheat bread. So lots of interesting facts here, but even if you want, whole wheat bread still has some antioxidants in it. And like I said, in the real paper, there's a ton of more nuts that they tested if you guys want to look. And then the last one are spices. So these are antioxidant content per gram or per 100 grams. So most of us do not use 100 grams or anywhere close to 100 grams of a spice when we're cooking. So please keep that in mind when you see these high values compared to the other fruits and nuts and beverages. But as you can see, clove, which has a really pungent smell, has super high antioxidant content. And then as does mint, cinnamon, thyme, rosemary, saffron, and sage. So you can see how clove has a lot higher antioxidant content than sage, but sometimes you use more sage than you would clove. So just another cool thing to keep in mind. Okay, and so this would equal, about 49 teaspoons, 160 teaspoons of mint, 37 teaspoons of cinnamon, way too many teaspoons of thyme. And I don't know how much 140 teaspoons of saffron costs, but it's way too much for me. But so that's pretty cool. And so some great ways to increase your daily antioxidant intake would be from green tea or black tea consumption if you're not a coffee person. To add these spices to your cooking, add turmeric, add some cloves, some nutmeg, some mint. I love to add curcumin. Things like that are really high in antioxidants, and they really make your cooking taste better and look better. So, there's some health benefits to that as well. And I personally have a big sweet tooth. I love chocolate. So dark chocolate has extremely high antioxidant content as long as you have it. Everyone has said something different, but I like to recommend above 76%. Cocoa is pretty healthy or has a pretty good antioxidant quality. And then I like to recommend fruit popsicles as well. I'm not allowed to recommend brands, but if you see fruit popsicles at the store with not a lot of added sugar, I think those are great healthy choices. Freezing your berries. I love to freeze blueberries, cherries, grapes. Like I'll buy a whole thing and stick it in the freezer, and then I'll just snack on them like popcorn. But it's an antioxidant boost and it's a cold snack. So always keep that in mind. And if you were to buy frozen berries at the grocery store, sometimes they're packaged a lot more freshly than the ones that you can buy in the produce section. So not only are they cheaper, but they might have better antioxidant quality as well. And then also having balanced eating patterns, like for example, the Mediterranean diet, having lots of grains and whole fruits and vegetables as part of your whole plate. That's a great way to have an equal and high intake of antioxidants. So we have a couple questions. So curcumin is not the same as cumin. And I buy frozen cherries from like the frozen aisle, so they don't usually come with pits. So for me, that makes it a little easier. So a couple of months ago, I did go out of my way to make my own chocolate. So, because I love antioxidants and I love chocolate. So we ordered the cocoa bean, and it goes through a fermentation process. So first you take the beans out and you let them ferment with all of the flesh around the bean. And after a week of that, you're going to let the beans dry out and then you roast them. And then after you roast them, you can kind of cook them down and temper them, add some cocoa butter or sugar if you like. And then the final product will look like this, like a really nice dark chocolate bar. Does not taste like what you've had in the store. Commercially made chocolate is a lot smoother than homemade chocolate, but still the health benefits are there. And a great way I like to remind myself to have antioxidant is to eat the colors, have a rainbow of food. Right now in the grocery stores, you'll see a lot of really cool, naturally colorful vegetables, purple asparagus, the candy striped beets. Personally, I'm growing in the middle these midnight Roma tomatoes. They're as black as an eggplant, but they are delicious in sauces. And then these are also something called cosmic carrots that are naturally grown purple carrots on the outside. So those are going to have more antioxidants. And this is a little overwhelming. Take it all at once. So every different color in the different vegetables and fruits can correlate to different compounds. So for example, when we have white or brown vegetables like onions, ginger, garlic, potatoes, those are really high in a compound or a phytochemical called flavonoids. Yellow containing fruits and vegetables will have lutein or zeaxanthin. Purple and blue have lots of anthocyanins. Green, of course, has chlorophyll, which is an antioxidant. So if you need another reason to have your greens, that's another one. And then as you guys can see, red and orange also have very specific phytochemicals. So by having a rainbow of food, you're incorporating different kinds of compounds into your diet. And that is the best that you can do for yourself. And like I was saying, the Mediterranean diet is a great way. Someone had mentioned vegan, but you don't necessarily have to go vegan to have a high antioxidant intake. You can do plant dense meals. So you could do a grain bowl, or you could do a spinach bowl with, all these different nuts and seeds and vegetables and fruits on top. And you'll still have a plant-based meal that is really filling. And then the DASH diet is a low sodium diet that you guys are free to look up. But it shows you how to make really great healthy choices that are low sodium if hypertension is on your radar for whatever reason. And that will be it for today. Thank you so much. I had a great time giving this presentation for you guys, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks. And I can also go back to any slides if anyone would like that.
So are there any questions for Brianna while she's with us? We have about 5 minutes for questions. Or any suggestions from people to get their antioxidants every day.
For Karen, who does ask about gut bacteria, my research is on the microbiome. So I have to recommend fiber. For example, beta glucans in oatmeal or barley, whole grain bread, brown rice, things like that, or even fiber in fruits and vegetables. Those are literally fuel for your gut microbes. They want fiber. That's all they want, and phytochemicals. So definitely keep that in mind. Quinoa is definitely a high fiber grain. So yes, please eat quinoa. And yes, you could technically I don't know if you could have too much antioxidant. People have seen toxic levels of vitamin A and when they have like it in supplemental form, but for the most part, I wouldn't say you can have too many antioxidants. For example, I have had like a whole thing of blueberries to myself, and then the next day, it's a whole nother story, but there are probably a little too many antioxidants there, but I don't think they're going to cause disease outcomes by having too many. With multivitamins, I'm very hesitant to recommend any. Multivitamins are most of the time you're peeing out a lot of the vitamins because they usually give you too much of whatever you need, and then a lot of these multivitamins are not in like bioavailable forms. So by the time you have that supplement and it's in your stomach, most of the time the gastric acid in your stomach breaks up anything. And if it continues, great. But for the most part, a lot of it gets destroyed there and you pee out. So I would definitely do a lot of research and look into bioavailability of those vitamins that you're interested in. But I always recommend getting vitamins from food sources. So if you need vitamin A, D, E, K, whatever vitamin you need, food sources are the most bioavailable way to get those vitamins. Go ahead.
It's just the next question. When you add sugar and or cream to coffee and tea.
That's a great question. I don't know if I wouldn't think it quenches it. Because like cream has a lot of fat and sugars, and we're talking about like reactive oxygen species. So those don't really exist in the coffee, or I'm sorry, in the sugar, the cream. The one thing though I do recommend that would affect the antioxidant potency is the storage form. of the tea or the coffee. For example, if you have pre-ground coffee, or if you're grinding the beans like that morning, the longer the antioxidants are exposed to air or oxygen, they will, as soon as they expose to oxygen, sometimes light, they will be quenched and they won't have as high antioxidant abilities. So by fresh grinding your coffee or by storing your tea in like an airtight container, those are ways to preserve the antioxidant capacity of those things. Or if you have spices, for example, as well, spices will lose their antioxidant ability the older they get. So if you can keep spices, if you can do fresh ground spices or keep them out of the sunlight or, you know, out of contact with oxygen, that will help preserve the antioxidant capabilities.
Yeah, and Karen is actually saying fresher produce is better, so eat local.
Yeah.
Great idea. Thank you, Karen. So thank you, everyone, for all of your great questions. Make sure that if Karen puts in the chat the link to the evaluation, you complete that. Let us know how the series have been useful, helpful to you. And again, we're looking for quotes. We're looking for ideas of things that you would like to learn more about. Our next session is next Tuesday. We'll look forward to having everyone back with us, and then we'll let you know what we're actually going to be doing this fall. So thank you again, Brianna, for a wonderful presentation. I know you have to go to another meeting, so we appreciate your ability to join us today, and we thank you for a great presentation. So
Yeah,
thanks everyone for being with us. We'll look forward to seeing you next Tuesday.